Now we are going to begin with the fifth chapter of Flamingo, Indigo, written by Louis Fisher. This chapter is an excerpt from Fisher's book, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi. The book has been reviewed by Times Educational Supplement. The author visited Gandhiji in 1942 and Gandhiji narrated him the incident which prompted him to fight against the British. Rajkumar Shukla, a poor peasant, came to Gandhi with the problem of exploitation in his district. About the author. Louis Fisher was a Jewish American journalist. He began his career as a school teacher, but later he became a journalist and a famous international reporter. In June 1942, he was permitted to stay for a week in the guest house near Mahatma Gandhi's ashram and conducted daily interviews with the great leader. Rajkumar Shukla, the resolute peasant. Gandhiji starts narrating the incident which made him decide to spur the exit of British from India. The incident occurred in 1917. Gandhi had gone to the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress Party in Lucknow. A poor and emaciated peasant, Rajkumar Shukla, approached Gandhiji there. Shukla was one of the sharecroppers of Champaran. Shukla wanted Gandhiji to visit his district and look into the condition of the peasants there. He came to the Congress session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar. Gandhiji had the other commitments, but Shukla accompanied him everywhere for weeks and never left his side. Gandhi was impressed by his tenacity and agreed to accompany him to Champaran. He told him to come to Calcutta and take him from there. Shukla and Gandhiji went to Patna, Bihar, to meet a lawyer named Rajendra Prasad, the man who later became the president of the Congress Party and of India. Rajendra Prasad was out of town. The servants knew Shukla as a poor peasant who pestered their master to help the indigo sharecropping. As Gandhiji accompanied him, they thought him to be another farmer. Gandhiji was not allowed to drink water from the well as they thought that he was an untouchable. Gandhiji decided to visit Muzaffarpur before Champaran to obtain more complete information about the conditions prevalent in the area. Gandhiji sent a telegram to Professor J.B. Kripalani, who later received him at the station with large body of students. Gandhiji stayed in Muzaffarpur for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, a government school teacher. He recalled that his stay in the house for a government servant was an extraordinary thing in those days. In the smaller localities, the Indians were afraid to show their sympathy. Gandhiji scolded the lawyers. The news of Gandhi's arrival spread in wildfire. Sharecroppers from Champaran began arriving in large numbers. Muzaffarpur lawyers met Gandhiji. They told him about their cases and reported size of their fee. Gandhiji scolded the lawyers for collecting the huge fee from the poor sharecroppers. Gandhiji concluded that the peasants were so crushed and fear-stricken that no ongoing law courts was useless. The real relief for them was to be free from fear. Sharecropping arrangement. Now, it was the most of the land fit for cultivation in Champaran was divided into large estates owned by Englishmen. They forced the Indian tenants to plant 15% of their holdings with indigo and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. After the landlords earned their Germany had developed synthetic indigo, they asked for compensation from the sharecroppers for being released from 15% arrangement. Now, Gandhiji now disobeys the official order. It was amidst the chaos that Gandhiji arrived in Champaran. He visited the Secretary of British Landlords Association in order to piece together all the facts. He was met with resistance. The secretary told him that no information would be given to an outsider. Gandhiji answered that he was no outside. He visited to the British Commissioner. Gandhiji reported that he was bullied and asked to leave their hut. Gandhiji proceeded to Motihari, the capital of Champaran. A vast multitude greeted him. Using a house as headquarters, he continued his investigations. A report came that a peasant had been maltreated in a nearby village. Gandhiji decided to check the matter himself. On the way, he ordered by police superintendent's messenger to return to the town. Thereafter, he was served with an official notice to quit Champaran, to which Gandhiji signed the receipt and the notice and further wrote that he would disobey the order. Spontaneous demonstrations of the peasants begin. Gandhiji could not sleep the whole night. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Patna with influential friends and sent instructions to the ashram. He also wired a full report to the viceroy. Next day, several thousands of peasants reached Motihari and started demonstrating around the courthouse. They had merely heard that a certain Mahatma who wanted to help them was in trouble with the authorities. Gandhiji felt that this was the beginning of their liberation from the fear of the British. Further, the officials felt powerless, but Gandhiji helped them to regulate the crowd. He gave them the proof that the British will no longer be born. The government was baffled. The trial was spontaneous. Gandhiji protested against the delay. He confessed that he broke the law but only because of the voice of his conscience. The magistrate announced a 2-hour recess and asked Gandhiji to get a bail prepared. Gandhiji refused. The judge didn't deliver the judgment for days, and Gandhiji was allowed to remain at liberty. Now, Gandhiji influences the lawyers further. Now, Rajendra Prasad, along with many prominent lawyers, conferred with Gandhiji. Gandhiji asked them what they could do if he was sent to jail. The senior lawyer replied that they were to help Gandhiji. If he was arrested, they would go home. Then the lawyers consulted among themselves. They thought that when Gandhiji, a total stranger, was ready to go to the jail for the sake of the peasants in their region, it would be shameful for them if they left the peasants whom these lawyers were claimed to serve. They told Gandhiji that they were ready to follow him to the jail. Gandhiji exclaimed, "The battle of Champaran is won." Civil disobedience movement triumphs and Lieutenant Governor summons Gandhiji. Gandhiji was informed that the governor of the province had ordered the case to be dropped. Civil disobedience had triumphed for the first time in modern India. Inquiries into the grievances of the farmers over a wide area began. About 10,000 testimonials were reported. Notes were made for evidence. Further, the whole area throbbed with activity, and the landlords protested vehemently against the inquiries. In June, Lieutenant Governor Sir Edward Gate summoned Gandhiji. Gandhiji laid out detailed plans for the civil disobedience. If he did not return from the summons, the lieutenant governor, after having four protracted meetings with Gandhiji, appointed an official commission to inquire into the situation. Gandhiji was the sole representative of the peasants in the commission. Further, Gandhiji then agrees to 25% of compensation. The evidence against the landlords was overwhelming. They asked Gandhiji how much they should repay, to which they thought that he would demand full repayment of the money which was illegally and deceitfully extorted from the sharecroppers. Gandhiji asked for only 50%. The landlords offered refund of 25%. To everybody's surprise, Gandhiji agreed. Gandhiji explained that the amount of the refund was not important. He said what mattered was that the landlords were obliged to surrender a part of the money, and with it a part of their prestige. The planters behaved as lords above the law, but after the incident, peasants saw that they had rights and persons to defend them. They learned courage. Now, the poor conditions of Champaran and Gandhi's typical methods were that he brought the cultural and social backwardness in Champaran villages immediately to be done something. He called for the volunteers to help. His wife Kasturba and his youngest son also arrived to help in primary schools were opened in 6 villages. Kasturbai thought that the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community sanitation. Castor oil, quinine, and sulfur ointment were given to the ailing. Gandhiji noticed that the filthy state of the women's clothes. He asked Kasturba to talk to them about it. Now further, the Gandhiji kept a long distance watch from the ashram. He sent regular instructions by post and asked for financial accounts. The Champaran episode was a turning point in Gandhi's life. Gandhiji, he explained that what he did was an ordinary thing. He declared that the British could not order him about his own country. Champaran was an attempt of free and the poor peasants from exploitation. It didn't begin as an act of self-reliance, the making of a free India. All the things that Gandhiji did, he tried to mold a new free Indian who could stand on his feet and thus make India free. Charles Freer Andrews, an English pacifist who had become a devoted follower of Gandhiji, came to bid him goodbye. Gandhi's lawyers' friends wanted Andrews to help them. Gandhiji strongly opposed the suggestion. According to him, asking for Andrew's help was showing their weakness of their hearts. He assured them that the cause was just and they must rely upon themselves to win the battle. Gandhiji, in this way, taught them a lesson on self reliance. Self reliance, Indian independence. So, this was the summary of the chapter Indigo from Flamingo. Thank you.